When Maya Reyes saw 12 black SUVs roll into the narrow alley outside her crumbling repair shop at dawn, their headlights cutting through the Chicago fog like predator eyes, she thought her life was over. The night before, she had done something no mechanic should ever do. She had touched the daughter of Konstantin Volkov, the most feared Mafia boss in Chicago, without permission. The girl's custom wheelchair, worth $85,000 and built by the finest engineers money could buy, was supposed to be untouchable. But Maya had seen something they all missed, something that made her gamble everything she had left, which wasn't much. Now, as men in black suits surrounded her shop, guns barely concealed beneath tailored jackets, and a man with eyes as cold as a Siberian winter stepped forward, Maya realized she had either performed a miracle or signed her own death warrant. But right now, standing in her garage at 6:47 in the morning, all she could think about was survival. The rumble started low, like distant thunder rolling across Lake Michigan, then grew into something that made the cracked windows of her small shop tremble. One SUV, then 3, then 7, then so many she stopped counting. 12 vehicles in total, 12 carriers of death, all converging on her failing shop on the south side, like a black armored convoy answering a call to war. Maya's hands trembled as she gripped the wrench she had been holding since she heard the first engine. Oil stained her fingers, ground into the creases of her palms from a night spent working until her body screamed for mercy. She was 28 years old, and she had faced danger before. In Iraq, in Syria, in a military hospital where she had held soldiers together with nothing but gauze and prayers. But this was different. This was not enemy combatants. This was an empire she had challenged. A father she had contradicted. A disabled girl she had touched without explicit permission. The SUVs formed a perfect semicircle around her shop, like wolves surrounding wounded prey. Tinted windows revealed nothing. The doors opened in synchronized precision, and men emerged with the calm efficiency of those who had done this many times before, and leading them all was a man known only as Koss. 6'1" of controlled fury, his black hair swept back from a face that showed nothing behind eyes the color of winter steel. A faint scar ran from his temple to his cheekbone, a reminder that even kings bleed. Maya watched through the cracked window of her garage door as Konstantin Volkov dismounted from the lead vehicle with the deliberate movements of someone who owned everything he surveyed. Someone who knew exactly what he was capable of. Someone who had buried enemies in places no one would ever find. How did I get here? The question screamed through Maya's mind as her heart hammered against her ribs. How did a broke mechanic with burn scars crawling down her arm and nightmares that never stopped end up standing between Chicago's most dangerous man and whatever judgment he had come to deliver? How did a woman who had already lost everything, her husband, her hearing, her hope, find herself with something left to lose? The answer, she knew, lay in a single moment of truth 14 hours earlier, a moment when she had seen something everyone else had missed, a moment when she had chosen compassion over fear, a moment when she had bet everything on her ability to see what others could not, to hear what machines were trying to say, to understand that the most expensive equipment in the world meant nothing if no one bothered to ask a 14-year-old girl where it hurt. Before we dive into what happens next, if you appreciate stories about ordinary people who risk everything to do what is right, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share this with someone who needs to believe that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell a powerful man the truth. Now, let us go back to where it all began. To understand what Maya did, you have to understand who Maya was. And to understand that, you have to understand that her shop was not just a business. It was a lifeline. The last thread holding her to a world that had tried to break her in every possible way. Ray's Repairs sat on the edge of Chicago's South Side, a place where streetlights flickered, and rent stayed cheap because no one wanted to live there. The walls were cracked, the roof leaked whenever the rain came hard. Yet Maya's tools were arranged with near-obsessive precision. That was the contradiction of Maya Reyes. She was broke, but she wasn't broken. Not where it mattered most. To understand why this little shop meant everything to her, you had to understand what she had survived. She had no memories of her biological parents. They were killed in a car accident when she was 8, leaving her and her 3-year-old brother Noah in the Illinois foster care system. The next 10 years were hell. 7 different foster families. Some indifferent, some violent. Maya learned to shield Noah with her own body, to take the blows meant for him because Noah was different. He was autistic, barely spoke, and saw the world through numbers and shapes no one else understood. When Maya turned 18, she signed her enlistment papers on her birthday, not out of patriotism, but because the military paid, and that money could keep Noah in a decent care facility instead of being tossed around like trash. She became a battlefield nurse and served 6 years, 2 deployments to Iraq and 1 to Syria. In field hospitals filled with blood and screaming, Maya learned the most important lesson of her life. She learned to see what others missed. An irregular heartbeat when the machine said everything was fine, a wound hidden beneath skin that wasn't bleeding, a soldier who said he wasn't in pain but was slowly dying inside. That was also where she found Jacob Reyes, a military vehicle mechanic whose smile made her forget they were standing in the middle of hell. They married in a small ceremony on base, witnessed only by their fellow soldiers. 2 short years of happiness. Then everything ended one afternoon outside Damascus. The convoy they were traveling in hit an IED. Maya was in the back seat, Jacob in front. When she saw the flash, Jacob had already turned and thrown his body over hers to shield her from the blast. He died in her arms 37 seconds later, his blood soaking into her uniform, his lips moving with words she couldn't hear because her ears were ringing from the pressure. She survived, with a burn scar running from her right shoulder down her arm, complete hearing loss in her left ear, and nightmares that never stopped. But Jacob didn't. After leaving the service, Maya came home with empty hands and a shattered heart. The VA denied most of her claims, saying her injuries weren't serious enough. For the next 8 months, she lived in Jacob's old truck, showered at gas stations, ate canned food, and tried not to let the darkness swallow her. Some nights she sat with Jacob's gun in her hands, wondering if continuing still had any meaning. Then she thought of Noah. He still needed her. He still waited every month, his eyes lighting up when he saw his sister. If she died, who would pay for his care? Who would make sure he wasn't mistreated? Who would remember that he loved apple pie but hated the crust? So Maya stood up again. She used her last savings to open this small repair shop, where she applied everything she had learned: how to listen to machines, how to see problems before they became disasters, how to fix what others said couldn't be fixed. On the shop wall, she hung a single photograph: Jacob in uniform, smiling at her through the lens. Every morning, she looked at it and spoke to him as if he were still there. And every morning, she reminded herself that surviving wasn't meaningless, that her hands could still do some good, that maybe one day she would find a reason to wake up without having to force herself. That Thursday morning, 24 hours before 12 black SUVs would surround her shop, Maya woke up on the torn sofa in the corner of the garage with pain running through her entire body. She had slept there instead of in the rented apartment upstairs because the night before she'd been too exhausted to climb the stairs. Early sunlight slipped through the doorframe and fell across Jacob's photograph on the wall. She looked at him and whispered as she did every day, "Another day, my love. I'm still trying." Then she saw it. A pink sheet of paper taped to the glass door, stamped in bold letters with an eviction notice. The landlord had come while she was asleep. 3 months of unpaid rent. She had 7 days to pay or leave. Maya pulled the paper down, folded it, and slipped it into her jeans pocket, as if hiding it might make the problem disappear. She knew it wouldn't. It only added weight to the growing pile of debt crushing her shoulders. Her phone vibrated. Greenfield Care, the facility where Noah lived. Maya hesitated for a second before answering because she knew they never called with good news. The administrator's voice was cool and distant. "Miss Reyes, we need to discuss the account. Noah's payments are 2 months overdue. If we don't receive payment before the end of the month, we'll have to transfer him to a public facility." Maya felt as if someone had punched her in the chest. A public facility meant understaffed halls and indifference. A place where Noah would be left in a corner because no one understood how to communicate with him. He hated change. He needed stability. He needed familiar faces. "Please give me more time," Maya said, forcing calm into a voice that was breaking inside. "I'll get the money. I promise." She ended the call without knowing how she would keep that promise. Her bank account held $43. Not enough to pay this month's electricity, let alone the rent and Noah's care. She sat on the old stool and looked around the garage. The neatly arranged tools, the clean but poor space, the Reyes Repairs sign outside, everything she had left, and possibly everything she would lose within weeks. The bell at the door pulled her from her thoughts. An elderly woman pushed a worn wheelchair into the shop, its wheels creaking with every step. Mrs. Rosa, 72 years old, living alone in a cheap apartment 3 blocks away. Maya's loyal customer since the day the shop opened. "Maya, my dear, my chair is broken again, Mrs. Rosa said apologetically. I know you're struggling, and I can't pay right now. Maybe next month. Maya stood, knelt beside the wheelchair, and began to inspect it. Don't worry about money, Mrs. Rosa. Let me see. 20 minutes later, Maya found the problems. Worn bearings, misaligned brakes, a loose bolt that could have sent the wheel flying at any moment. She fixed everything, replacing broken parts with used ones from her stock, not charging a cent. When Mrs. Rosa tried to press a $20 bill into her hand, Maya shook her head. Keep it for your medicine. I can't take food money from the elderly. Mrs. Rosa looked at her, eyes wet with age and emotion. Do you know who you remind me of? My grandfather. He was a mechanic too. He used to say, machines don't lie, people lie, but machines don't. If you listen, machines will tell you everything. Maya smiled, her first smile of the day. That's what I believe too, Mrs. Rosa. Machines don't betray. They don't abandon anyone. When something breaks, there's always a reason and always a way to fix it. The problem is most people don't listen. Mrs. Rosa left, and Maya was alone again with her thoughts. She looked at the unpaid bills, felt the eviction notice in her pocket, then looked up at Jacob's photograph. Maybe she would have to close the shop. Maybe she would live in the truck again. But at least today, she had helped someone. And sometimes, that was all she could do. She didn't know that in just a few hours, a black SUV would park outside and change everything. Late that afternoon, as Maya wiped the oil from her hands and prepared to close the shop, she heard an engine. Not the rough coughing of old sedans or cheap taxis that usually pass through this neighborhood. This was the smooth, controlled sound of expensive machinery, the kind she rarely heard on the south side. She looked up and saw it. A gleaming black SUV parked directly in front of her shop, its tinted windows hiding everything inside. Years of battlefield survival instincts made Maya tense instantly. In this area, expensive cars never brought good news. The door opened. 2 men in black suits stepped out first, their eyes sweeping the alley with the alertness of men trained to spot threats. Then a third man emerged from the front passenger seat. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his gray hair cut close, his face carved like granite with cold, sharp eyes. He wore a perfectly tailored dark gray suit, and the way he stood marked him as someone used to giving orders, not hearing no. Alexei Petrov, though Maya didn't know his name yet, the right hand of Konstantin Volkov, the man who had buried more enemies than Maya had years in her life. But what caught Maya's attention wasn't the frightening men. It was the girl they brought from the back seat. A girl of about 14 sat in a futuristic electric wheelchair, as if she had rolled straight out of a technology expo. The frame was made of ultralight titanium alloy, the wheels specially engineered, an electronic control panel with a touchscreen, and a suspension system. Maya guessed cost at least $70,000 or $80,000, maybe more. One of the men pushed the wheelchair into the shop while Alexei followed, looking around Maya's small garage with open disdain, as if stepping inside had dirtied his polished shoes. The chair is broken, he said in a thick Russian accent. Fix it now. Don't ask questions. Don't tell anyone. Maya opened her mouth to ask what was wrong, but Alexei's gaze stopped her. It was the look of a man who didn't explain, a man accustomed to obedience without reasons. Any other mechanic might have bowed and gotten to work, but Maya didn't look at the wheelchair first. She looked at the girl, and she saw what these men completely missed. The girl had long black hair tied neatly back, pale skin like someone starved of sunlight, and cool gray eyes identical to someone Maya would soon meet. But it wasn't her appearance that caught Maya's attention. It was how she sat. Her shoulders tilted slightly left. Her right hand gripped the armrest as if clinging to something. Her jaw was set in a way Maya knew too well. It was how people sat when they were trying to endure pain without letting anyone know. Maya had seen it in wounded soldiers on stretchers, pretending to be fine so their comrades wouldn't worry. She had seen it in herself after the explosion, smiling at doctors and saying everything was fine while inside she was screaming. This girl was in pain. Not a little pain, but the kind that becomes part of life. So constant she no longer remembered what it felt like not to hurt. And no one noticed. The men around her saw only the expensive chair. They saw technology, money, what wealth could buy. They didn't see the girl sitting in it. No one asked how she felt. Maya knelt, bringing herself to the girl's eye level, instead of standing over her as others did. She looked directly into the gray eyes, trying to hide too much. "Hello," Maya said softly. "I'm Maya. What's your name?" The girl looked surprised, as if no one had ever asked her something so simple. Alexei moved to interrupt, but Maya raised a hand without turning around. "I'm asking her, not you." Silence stretched. The two men behind rested hands on their weapons. Alexei narrowed his eyes dangerously. But for the first time in a long while, someone genuinely wanted to hear the girl speak. "Mila," the girl answered, her voice small, as if afraid of being overheard. "I'm Mila." Maya smiled at Mila, the first genuine smile of the day. "Hello, Mila. What's wrong with your chair that brought you here?" The girl opened her mouth to answer, but Alexei cut in. "The control system is malfunctioning. Sometimes it doesn't respond to commands. Fix it." Maya didn't turn to look at him. She kept her eyes on Mila, watching how the girl reacted to Alexei's answer, and she saw exactly what she was looking for. Mila didn't nod in agreement. She didn't shake her head in disagreement either. She simply fell silent, gray eyes lowered as if she were used to others speaking for her, used to no one asking her opinion. "Mila," Maya said, her voice gentle but steady. "Can you tell me where your chair hurts?" Alexei stepped closer. "I already told you. The control system. Are you deaf?" Maya stood up and turned to face him. For the first time, she looked straight into the eyes of this dangerous man without blinking. "I heard you, but I wasn't asking you. I was asking her, because she's the one sitting in that chair every day. She knows what's wrong, not you." The silence tightened. The two guards behind him slid their guns from their holsters, not aiming yet, but the message was unmistakable. Alexei narrowed his eyes, his jaw hardening. Before anyone could move, a small voice spoke. "It's not the control system." Everyone turned to Mila. She was trembling, her hands gripping the armrests so tightly her knuckles had gone white. But for the first time in a very long while, someone actually wanted to hear her speak, and she wasn't going to miss it. "The control system works fine," Mila continued, her voice still small but clearer now. "The problem is, I'm in pain." "Where does it hurt?" Maya knelt again, her voice as gentle as when she spoke to Noah. "Everywhere." Mila swallowed, her eyes filling. "My back, my hips, my legs, even though I can't feel my legs anymore. Every time the chair moves, every time a wheel rolls over a crack in the road, it feels like someone is driving needles into my spine. But I'm not allowed to say anything. Because my father paid so much money. Because this is the best chair. Because the engineers said it's perfect. If I still hurt, it means the problem is me, not the chair." She knew that feeling. She knew what it was like to be told you weren't hurt enough to matter. To be told your injuries weren't serious enough. To be told that if you were still suffering, it was because you weren't trying hard enough. "How long have you been in pain?" Maya asked. "Since I got this chair." "Almost 3 years," Mila whispered, her voice breaking. "But I can't tell my father. He lost my mother because of me. If I disappoint him again..." Maya didn't understand what losing her mother because of her meant, but she set it aside for later. Right now, she needed to focus on what mattered. "Will you let me check your chair?" Mila nodded. Maya began to work. She didn't look at the control system like Alexei demanded. Instead, she touched every part of the chair with hands trained to listen to machines. She closed her eyes, feeling, measuring with intuition more than tools. And she found them. The flaws the brilliant engineers with degrees from prestigious universities had missed. The seat tilt was off by 2 degrees, forcing Mila's spine into an unnatural position all day long. The backrest was designed for an average spinal curve, but Mila's spine curved differently after her injury. The suspension system was too stiff for her body weight, turning every bump in the road into a direct udar to her spine. The footrest was positioned a few centimeters wrong, pulling Mila's hips out of alignment every minute of every hour of every day for 3 years. Maya stood and looked at Alexei, fear gone, replaced by cold anger. "This chair," she said evenly, "was designed for an average disabled person. But Mila isn't average. Her body is different. Her injury is different. Your engineers measured everything, but they never asked how she felt. They designed for data, not for a human being. This $85,000 chair has been torturing her every second she sits in it." Alexei replied coolly. "You're saying Europe's top experts are wrong, and some nobody mechanic from this slum is right?" Maya didn't back down. "I'm saying those experts never had to sit in the chair they designed, and I know what it feels like to be in pain no one believes." She turned to Mila. "I can fix it, but I need time, and I need them to let me do it my way." Alexei pulled out his phone and dialed a single number. "Boss," he said into the phone, his voice suddenly far more respectful than it had been with Maya. "There's something you need to see. You need to come here now." 20 minutes later, 3 more black SUVs pulled up in front of the shop. The air seemed to drop 10 degrees the moment the first door opened. Maya didn't need an introduction to know who the man stepping out was. Konstantin Volkov moved as if he owned not only these vehicles, but this alley, this neighborhood, perhaps the entire city. 6'1", broad-shouldered in a perfectly tailored charcoal 3-piece suit, black hair swept back from a face as cold and sharp as carved ice. A faint scar ran from his temple down his cheekbone, and his gray eyes fixed on Maya with the intensity of a man accustomed to watching others kneel. Mila's eyes were frighteningly similar to her father's, but where Mila's held hidden pain, Konstantin's held only glacial emptiness. 6 bodyguards lined up behind him, hands on their weapons, eyes never leaving Maya. Alexei stepped forward and whispered into his boss's ear, recounting everything that had happened. Maya couldn't hear the words, but she saw Konstantin's jaw tighten with each sentence. When Alexei finished, Konstantin walked toward Maya with slow, deliberate steps. He stopped less than a meter from her, close enough for her to smell his expensive cologne and feel the cold radiating from him. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low and steady like a machine running. "To claim my daughter's equipment is defective? I've spent over $200,000 in the past 5 years. The best doctors, the best engineers, specialists from Germany, Switzerland, Japan. And you, a mechanic in this crumbling garage, dare to say they're wrong?" Maya knew she should bow her head. She knew she should apologize, say she was mistaken, let these men leave so she could live to see tomorrow. But then she saw Mila over Konstantin's shoulder. The girl was curled in on herself in the wheelchair, fear in her eyes as she looked at her father. And Maya realized something. Mila was more afraid of disappointing her father than of pain. She had endured 3 years of suffering simply to avoid making him sad. And somehow, that was more painful than any wound Maya had ever seen. She drew a deep breath and did what no one dared. She looked straight into Konstantin Volkov's eyes without blinking. "You paid experts," Maya said, her voice steady though her heart was pounding like a war drum. "But none of them asked how your daughter feels. They measured her body, but they didn't listen to her. They designed for averages, not for Mila. And the result is that your daughter has been in pain for 3 years and no one noticed." The silence became suffocating. Bodyguards drew their guns, aiming directly at Maya. Alexei placed a hand on Konstantin's shoulder, awaiting the order. But Maya didn't move. "Do you know who I am?" Konstantin asked, his voice colder than his stare. Maya nodded. "I do, and I don't care. I only care that your daughter is hurting and no one is willing to see it." Konstantin stepped closer, the space between them now only inches. "Aren't you afraid to die?" Maya remembered the nights she sat with Jacob's gun in her hands. Remembered 8 months living in a truck, wondering if it was worth waking up the next day. Remembered what it felt like to lose everything and have nothing left to lose. "I died 5 years ago in Syria," she replied evenly, "in an explosion that took my husband and part of my soul. What you see standing here is what remains, trying to do something right before I'm truly gone. So no, I'm not afraid to die. I'm only afraid of doing nothing meaningful before it happens." For the first time, Maya saw something change in Konstantin's eyes. Not warmth, not mercy, but curiosity, as if he had never met anyone like her before. Before he could speak, another voice broke in. "Dad." Everyone turned to Mila. She was crying, tears running down her cheeks, but her voice was clearer than it had ever been. "I really am in pain, Dad. Every day, every hour, every minute I sit in this chair. But I didn't dare say anything because you spent so much money. Because the doctors said it was perfect. Because if I still hurt, it meant the fault was mine, not theirs." Konstantin stood frozen. Maya saw the icy wall in his face crack for the first time, revealing what lay beneath. Pain, guilt, the fear of a father realizing he had failed without knowing it. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked hoarsely. "Because you lost Mom because of me," Mila sobbed. "I didn't want you to think you'd lost me too. I didn't want to disappoint you. I didn't want you to look at me and see one more thing you couldn't fix." Maya watched and understood many things at once. Mila's mother had died. Mila blamed herself, and she had endured pain in silence because she believed her father had suffered enough already. Konstantin turned to Maya, and this time his eyes were no longer cold. They held something Maya never expected to see in a Mafia boss. Desperation. "Can you fix it?" he asked. Maya nodded. "I need time, and I need you to let me work my way. No interference, no questioning." "How long?" 12 hours. Give me one night. If by morning the chair isn't better, you can do whatever you want with me." Constantine studied her for a long moment, then looked at his daughter crying in the wheelchair. He turned back to Maya and said 2 words she never expected. 12 hours. Then he dragged a chair from the corner of the garage and sat a few meters away. "I'll stay here. Watch you work. If you're right, I owe you. If you're wrong—" He stopped, not needing to finish. Maya understood the rest. She looked at the $85,000 wheelchair, at the 14-year-old girl who had suffered for 3 years, at the Mafia boss placing her life in the hands of 12 ticking hours. Then she picked up her tools and began to work. Mila was taken by Alexei to the back room to rest, but she couldn't sleep. She lay on Maya's old sofa, her eyes following every shadow that passed the doorway. Maya had helped her transfer into a battered spare wheelchair kept in storage. A cheap piece of equipment with no modern technology, but at least one that didn't cause pain. Then she returned to the $85,000 chair and began the real work. She dismantled it piece by piece. First, the outer titanium alloy shell, then the electronic control system, circuit boards, wiring, sensors. Maya worked with absolute focus, her hands moving with the same precision she once had in field hospitals, cutting into wounded soldiers while they bled. Constantine sat silently on a chair a few meters away, gray eyes never leaving her for a second. His bodyguards had withdrawn outside on his order, leaving only Alexei standing in the corner like a statue. But Maya didn't notice them. For her, there was only the wheelchair and the secrets it was hiding. 1 hour passed in silence. Then 2. Maya reached the seat frame, and the sound of metal meeting metal echoed steadily through the quiet garage. That scar. Constantine's voice suddenly broke the silence. "Did you get it from the explosion you mentioned?" Maya paused for a second, then kept working. She didn't look at him. "Yes." She pulled her sleeve higher, revealing the full burn scar running from her shoulder, nearly to her elbow. The skin was puckered, discolored, uneven like candle wax melted and hardened again. "Fuel ignited," she said evenly, as if telling someone else's story. "My husband pushed me out of the center of the blast. He took almost all of it. I only caught the edge of the fire, enough to remember forever." Constantine was quiet for a long moment. "Your husband died?" "Jacob." "His name was Jacob." Maya stopped and looked at the photograph on the wall. "He died in my arms. 37 seconds. Long enough for me to watch the light fade from his eyes. Long enough for him to try to say something I couldn't hear because my ears were ringing. Long enough for me to understand he chose to save me instead of himself." She returned to her work, her hands trembling slightly but still precise. "Sometimes I wish he'd chosen differently. I wish he'd lived and I'd died. At least he'd know how to go on. I don't. I'm only existing, not really living." Constantine stood and stepped closer to the work table. He didn't touch her, but he stood near enough for her to feel his presence. "I understand that feeling," he said, his voice lower now, stripped of its usual coldness. "My wife died 5 years ago, in an assassination attempt meant for me. Irina was standing beside me when they opened fire. She fell into my arms, her blood soaking into my suit, and I could do nothing but watch her go." Maya looked up, for the first time meeting Constantine's eyes, not with defiance or fear, but with understanding. "And Mila?" "She was in the car behind us. The bullet went through the seat and into her spine. The doctors said she was lucky to survive." Constantine gave a bitter laugh. "Lucky. My daughter lost her mother and her legs on the same day, and they call that lucky." Maya understood then why Mila said she lost her mother because of herself. The girl didn't cause her mother's death, but she had been there. She had seen it, and in the mind of a 10-year-old, surviving when a parent dies can turn into lifelong guilt. Just as Maya carried guilt because Jacob chose to save her. "You built your empire to protect your family," Maya said, not as a question but as recognition. "But that empire killed your wife and crippled your daughter." Constantine didn't answer. He only stood there, watching Maya work, and in the weak yellow light of the garage, for the first time he didn't look like a terrifying mafia boss. He looked like a father who had failed and didn't know how to fix it. Maya bent back over the wheelchair and kept dismantling it. She said nothing more. Sometimes silence is the only way 2 people with the same kind of wounds can stand beside each other without causing more pain. Outside, Chicago slipped into night. The clock hands kept turning, counting down the 12 fateful hours. 3 in the morning. Maya had completely dismantled the wheelchair, its parts laid out neatly on the work table like a surgery paused halfway through. She began to measure everything again, this time not by the engineer's averages, but by Mila's real body. She had watched how the girl sat, how she leaned, how her spine curved, how her weight was unevenly distributed. She measured with her eyes, her hands, the intuition of someone who had spent a lifetime listening to what machines and bodies were trying to say. Constantine was still sitting there, refusing to leave despite Alexei repeatedly urging him to rest. He watched Maya work with the same focus he usually reserved for life and death negotiations. She loved music, he suddenly said, as if speaking more to himself than to Maya. Irina, my wife. She played the piano. Every night before Mila went to sleep, she played one piece. The same one. Brahms' Lullaby. Maya didn't stop working, but she listened. After Irina died, Constantine continued. Mila refused to listen to music. She wouldn't let anyone play the piano in the house. The room with my wife's piano has been locked for 5 years. I don't have the courage to go in. And Mila doesn't either. He paused and drew a deep breath. I built my empire from nothing. I kill without hesitation. I make all of Chicago fear me, but I can't step into that room. I can't look at the piano without seeing her hands on the keys. I can't hear piano music without hearing gunshots right after. Maya looked up at him. In the dim garage light at 3 a.m, Konstantin Volkov didn't look like the most powerful mafia boss in Chicago. He looked like a man who had lost too much and didn't know how to stop losing more. I've spent over $200,000, he said bitterly. The best doctors, the best surgeries, the most expensive wheelchair. I thought money could fix everything. I thought if I paid enough, my daughter wouldn't hurt. But for 3 years she's been in pain every day and I never knew, because I never asked. He looked down at his hands that had strangled men, signed death sentences, built an empire. I'm the worst father in the world. Maya set her tools down and met his eyes. You're not a bad father. You're a father who doesn't know how to listen. There's a difference. A bad father doesn't care whether his child is in pain. You do care. You just don't know how to ask. And Mila loves you enough to endure pain rather than disappoint you. That's not failure. That's a misunderstanding. And misunderstandings can be fixed. Constantine studied her for a long moment, and for the first time that night, Maya saw the corner of his mouth lift slightly. Not a smile. Only the shadow of a smile that had died long ago trying to live again. You talk to me as if I couldn't kill you at any moment. Maya shrugged. If you wanted to kill me, you already would have. The fact that you're still sitting here listening means you don't want me dead. You want your daughter to stop hurting, and that makes you different from real monsters. She returned to her work, and time kept moving. 4 a.m, 5. Maya reassembled the wheelchair with adjustments no textbook taught. She changed the seat angle. 2 degrees could mean the difference between pain and comfort. She reshaped the backrest to match Mila's unique spinal curve after injury. She replaced the suspension system with a softer one suited to the girl's light body weight. She shifted the footrest a few centimeters, just enough so Mila's hips would no longer be pulled out of alignment. Small changes, but these were exactly what brilliant engineers had missed. They designed for averages. Maya designed for Mila. 6:15 a.m. Dawn began to slip through the doorway as Maya tightened the final bolt. She straightened up, her back aching, eyes burning from exhaustion, but the wheelchair before her was whole again. It's done, she said hoarsely. Bring Mila. Alexei went into the back room and returned with Mila in the old spare wheelchair. She hadn't slept all night, her eyes red and swollen from crying. But when she saw her own chair fully reassembled, she looked more anxious than hopeful. 3 years of pain had taught Mila not to expect good things. Every time someone promised to help, she had been disappointed again. She had learned not to hope, so she wouldn't be crushed anymore. Maya knelt in front of her, meeting the frightened gray eyes. You don't have to believe me, she said gently. You only have to try. If it still hurts, tell me. I'll keep fixing it until it's right. You don't have to suffer in silence anymore. Mila looked at Maya, then at her father standing nearby with a tense face, then back at the wheelchair. She took a deep breath and nodded. Maya and Alexei helped Mila transfer slowly from the old chair into the repaired one. Maya watched every change in the girl's expression, as if reading a book. Mila settled in. Her back met the adjusted support. Her hips found their new position. Her legs rested on the shifted footplate, and then Maya saw it. The change on Mila's face. First confusion. She blinked, as if unsure what was happening. Then she tried to move forward. The wheels rolled smoothly across the cracked concrete floor. The new suspension absorbed every vibration instead of driving it straight into her spine. Mila stopped. Her eyes widened. Her lips trembled. "Dad," she whispered. "Dad, I don't hurt." Constantine stepped forward, then stopped, as if afraid to believe it. "What did you say?" "I don't hurt, Dad," Mila repeated, louder now, her voice breaking into tears. "For the first time, since I got this chair, I'm sitting and it doesn't hurt. I'm moving and it doesn't hurt. I don't feel like needles are stabbing my back anymore. Dad, I don't hurt anymore." She burst into tears. Not the cries of pain Maya had seen the night before, but the sobs of release. 3 years of endurance. 3 years of silence. 3 years of telling herself it was her fault, that she wasn't strong enough, that she wasn't allowed to complain. All of it poured out in unstoppable tears down the cheeks of the 14-year-old girl. Constantine stood frozen for a moment. Then the wall he had built for 5 years, the icy wall of a Mafia boss who never showed emotion, collapsed completely. He dropped to his knees beside his daughter's chair, his hands trembling as he took Mila's, and he cried. Maya never imagined she would see this. Konstantin Volkov, the man who made all of Chicago fear him, the man who had buried countless enemies, kneeling on the dirty concrete floor of a broken garage and crying like a child. He pulled his daughter into his arms, his shoulders shaking, broken sobs tearing from his throat. 5 years, he said, through tears. 5 years you were in pain and I didn't know. 5 years you suffered alone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault, Mila whispered, holding him tightly. It's no one's fault. What matters is I don't hurt anymore. Maya stepped back, her own eyes wet though she tried not to cry. Watching them, she felt something she thought had died long ago begin to live again in her chest. Meaning, purpose, a reason to go on. Alexei stood in the corner, his stone face unchanged, but Maya saw him swallow and turn away. Even the hardest men have limits. After a long moment, Konstantin stood. He turned to Maya, his eyes red but no longer cold. Something new lived there. Gratitude, respect, perhaps the seed of something deeper. You did what hundreds of experts couldn't, he said hoarsely. In one night, with a broken garage and old tools, you gave my daughter back something I thought was lost forever. Maya shook her head. I only did what they should have done from the start. I listened to her. Konstantin studied her as if memorizing every line of her face. I owe you, he said. In my world, debts are sacred. What do you want? Money. As much as you wish. Anything. Maya looked around her small garage, felt the eviction notice in her pocket, thought of the unpaid bills on the table. She could ask for anything. Enough to save the shop. Enough to secure Noah's future forever. Enough to never fear tomorrow again. But she shook her head. I don't want your money. I only did what was right. That's not a debt. That's simply doing the right thing. Konstantin looked at her as if she had spoken a language he didn't know. In his world, everything had a price. No one acted without motive. No one refused money when it was offered. You're the first person to ever say that to me, he said slowly, and truly mean it. And now we return to where the story began. The next morning, 6:47. Maya stood in her garage, her hand gripping a wrench, staring at 12 black SUVs surrounding her shop. She hadn't slept after Konstantin and Mila left the night before. She had sat on the old stool, looking at Jacob's photograph, wondering whether she had done the right thing or the wrong one, whether refusing a Mafia boss's money was noble or foolish, whether anything would change or whether she would still lose the shop, lose Noah, lose everything within weeks. Then she heard the engines, and her heart skipped a beat. 12 SUVs, dozens of men in black suits, guns hidden beneath jackets, a formation like wolves encircling prey. Maya thought this was the moment she would die. She thought Konstantin might have changed his mind, that a Mafia boss couldn't allow anyone to know he had cried, had knelt, had shown weakness. She tightened her grip on the wrench, not because she believed it could protect her, but because she needed to hold on to something to keep from shaking. The first SUV door opened. Konstantin stepped out, and Maya saw what she never expected. He was carrying flowers, a bright bouquet of yellow sunflowers in the hands of a man who had killed more people than she could count. The image was so absurd she didn't know how to react. Konstantin walked into the garage, set the flowers on her work table, and looked around the small room with a different expression than the night before. No contempt, no judgment, only respect. You refused my money, he said, but you can't refuse protection. From today, this shop is under my protection. Anyone who touches you will face my entire force. Maya opened her mouth to object, But Constantine raised a hand. I'm not asking your opinion. This isn't an offer. It's a decision. He nodded to Alexei, who stepped forward and placed a leather briefcase on the table. When it opened, Maya saw thick stacks of cash. This is payment for last night's work, Constantine said. Don't tell me you don't want it. I don't care what you want. This is the value of what you did. You deserve to be paid. Take it. Before Maya could respond, Alexei placed a file folder beside it. I've looked into you, Constantine continued. I know about your brother, Noah. Greenfield Care, 2 months overdue. Maya felt the blood freeze in her veins. He had investigated her. He knew about Noah. He knew her greatest weakness. She thought of 100 ways he could use that information to control her, to force her, to turn her into a puppet. But what he said next left her frozen. I contacted Lakewood Special Care Center on the North Shore, the best facility in Illinois for autism. They have a place for Noah. All expenses have been paid, permanently. Maya couldn't speak. Lakewood. She had heard of it. She had dreamed of sending Noah there in her darkest nights. The annual cost was more than her lifetime earnings, and Constantine had just said he paid it, forever. Why? She whispered. Because you gave my daughter something I couldn't buy with money, Constantine replied. You gave Mila a voice. You saw her. You treated her like a human being instead of a problem to be fixed. He stepped closer, gray eyes locked on hers. And you gave me the chance to see my daughter smile for the first time in 5 years. Do you know when Mila last smiled? When her mother was still alive. You gave that smile back to my daughter. No amount of money is enough to repay that. But I can try. Tears ran down Maya's cheeks before she could stop them. She thought of Noah, waiting all these years with eyes lighting up whenever she visited. Thought of him living somewhere people understood him. Cared for him properly. Gave him a chance to grow instead of merely exist. Thought of no longer lying awake at night worrying about medical bills. Thank you, she said softly. It was all she could say. 2 words. But Constantine understood. He nodded. And for the first time, Maya saw him smile. Not the cold smile of power, but the smile of a father who had found hope again. Mila wants to visit you, he said. She wants to learn how you work. I'll bring her if you agree. Maya looked at him, then at the sunflowers, then at the briefcase of money, then at the Lakewood file. She didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time in a long while, she felt that there might be a future at all. 3 months passed like a dream Maya hardly dared to believe was real. Rhea's Repairs was no longer a crumbling garage on the verge of seizure. Constantine had sent people to renovate everything, replacing the roof, repainting the walls, installing solid glass doors. But he kept the old sign because Maya insisted. This is still my shop, she told him. I accept help, but I don't want it to become something else. Constantine agreed without argument, and Maya realized that was something he rarely did for anyone. News of the mechanic who had fixed an $85,000 wheelchair overnight spread quickly through Chicago's disabled community. First came a veteran with a poorly fitted prosthetic leg, sent by friends. Maya spent 4 hours readjusting the entire device, and when the man took his first painless steps in 2 years, he cried right there in the shop. Then a single mother brought her 8-year-old son with cerebral palsy, his wheelchair a hand-me-down from a charity program and completely unsuitable. Maya worked through the night without charging a cent. And the next morning the boy smiled for the first time in months. Little by little, Maya's shop became the place people abandoned by the system came to. She didn't advertise. She didn't need to. Word spread, and each week more people knocked on her door with hope and desperation intertwined in their eyes. Maya helped everyone she could, and for those without money, she charged nothing. Constantine knew this and said nothing, only quietly ensuring the shop was always stocked with enough parts and tools. Mila visited 3 times a week. At first she only sat and watched Maya work, gray eyes following every movement with curiosity. Then she began to ask questions. Why do you do it this way? How does this work? How do you know what needs fixing? Maya explained everything with a patience she didn't know she had. She discovered Mila was extraordinarily intelligent, her mind working in ways Maya had never seen. The girl could look at a design and immediately point out what was wrong. She could hear an explanation once and remember it forever. You should study biomedical engineering, Maya told her one afternoon as they worked together on a veteran's wheelchair. You have the mind for it. You could design devices for people like you and get them right from the start. Mila looked at Maya with eyes lighting up in a way Maya had heard hadn't appeared since her mother was alive. Do you think I could do it? Maya smiled. I think you can do anything you want. The bond between Maya and Mila grew as naturally as breathing. A 14-year-old girl who had lost her mother found in Maya the warmth she longed for. And Maya, who had lost her husband and never had children, found in Mila a purpose she didn't know she had been seeking. As for Constantine, he found more and more reasons to appear at the shop. At first he said it was to pick up Mila. Then he said it was to check security. Then to make sure Maya had enough supplies. But Maya noticed he often arrived earlier than necessary and stayed longer than required. He sat in the corner with a laptop, pretending to work while actually watching her and Mila interact. Sometimes he brought her coffee, expensive coffee from a North Side cafe Maya could never afford. Sometimes he stayed until evening, helped her close the shop, then stood talking with her beneath dim streetlights until Alexei reminded him of meetings. They talked about everything and nothing. About Mila, about Noah, who was thriving at Lakewood and beginning to communicate more for the first time. About Maya's work, about pieces of their pasts, shared slowly like fragments of two shattered pictures. Constantine never spoke of his real business, and Maya didn't ask. She knew who he was. She knew his empire was built on blood and violence. But she also knew he was a father who would kneel and weep for his daughter. A man who brought sunflowers to a poor mechanic who had refused his money. A man who found a way to protect her brother without demanding anything in return. People weren't simply black or white. Maya understood that better than most. She had killed in war. She had done things she could never tell anyone. What right did she have to judge Constantine? "I've never seen my father like this," Mila said one afternoon after Constantine had just left. "What do you mean?" He smiles. "Miss Maya, my father hasn't smiled since my mother died. But now he smiles. When he's here, when he's near you." Maya didn't know what to say. She only felt her heart skip a beat, and that frightened her more than any gun ever had. That night came on a Saturday evening at the end of the 3rd month. Mila had gone home earlier with Alexei because she had a test the next morning, but Constantine stayed behind, saying he wanted to make sure Maya closed safely. They both knew it was only an excuse. The shop had been closed for a long time, yet they were still standing there under the garage's dim yellow lights, talking about unimportant things simply to stretch the time they had together. Maya was telling him about the first time she ever repaired a vehicle in Afghanistan, a Humvee that broke down in the desert, and how she had used her own shoelaces as a temporary belt. Constantine laughed, a deep, warm sound filling the small space, and Maya realized it was the first time she had ever heard him truly laugh. Not a polite laugh, not a cynical one, but the laughter of a man who was genuinely happy. "You've got grease on your cheek," Constantine said suddenly, interrupting her story. Maya lifted her hand to wipe it away, but Constantine was faster. His finger brushed her cheek, gently removing the smear of oil, and then it stayed there. His gray eyes held hers with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. Maya knew she should step back. She knew this was a line that, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. She knew Konstantin Volkov was a Mafia boss, the most dangerous man she had ever met, everything she should never be involved with. But she didn't step back, and when Konstantin leaned down and kissed her, she didn't turn away. The kiss began softly, cautiously, as if they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. Then it deepened, grew more urgent, like two drowning people finally finding each other in the ocean. Maya felt tears run down her cheeks without knowing why. Maybe because this was the first time she had let anyone close since Jacob. Maybe because she thought she would never feel this again. Maybe because she was afraid. When they parted, Constantine rested his forehead against hers and whispered, "I'm not a good man, Maya. You know that. I've done things you can't imagine. I've killed people. I've destroyed other families. I don't deserve your purity." Maya placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. "I've killed too," she replied softly. "In war." I watched the light go out in their eyes and kept walking. "I'm not pure either. The only difference is the blood on my hands is accepted by the government and yours isn't." Constantine looked at her as if she were the only miracle left in a world that had forgotten miracles. "You're the only thing in my life I can't buy with money," he said. "Maybe that's why I have value," Maya answered. And for the first time in a long while, she smiled without guilt. They didn't know that 2 blocks away, a black car was parked in the shadows, and a pair of eyes was watching everything through infrared binoculars. Yuri Kozlov lowered the binoculars and smiled, the smile of a predator who had just found his prey's weakness. He was 40, sharp-featured with a scar running across his nose, eyes black as a bottomless pit. He was Konstantin's rival Mafia boss for over 10 years, and the war between their empires had taken countless lives on both sides. But Constantine always won. Always one step ahead. Always with no weakness to exploit. Until now, Yuri took out his phone and called one of his men. "Find out everything about that mechanic," he ordered calmly, like reading a shopping list. "Family, friends, relatives, anything we can use." It seems the Volkov wolf has finally shown his soft belly, and Yuri Kozlov was not the type to miss an opportunity. He started the car and drove into the Chicago night, his mind already mapping out plans. A mechanic. Interesting. After all these years, Constantine finally had something to lose. 2 weeks after that kiss, Maya's life seemed to be getting better than ever. She and Constantine weren't officially anything, but something was forming between them, something they were both too afraid to name. Mila had started calling her Miss Maya instead of Miss Reyes. Noah was improving at Lakewood, speaking a complete sentence for the first time with his caregivers. Maya's shop was busier than ever, and she had hired 2 disabled veterans to help. Everything was finally going right. Until that morning, Maya received the call from Lakewood at 7:15 a.m. "Miss Reyes," the manager's voice trembled on the line. "Someone came here with transfer papers. They said they were authorized by you. We tried to call to confirm but couldn't reach you. By the time we checked again, they were gone." With Noah, Maya's heart skipped a beat. The blood in her veins turned to ice. "Who?" she asked, her voice strangled. "Who took my brother?" "I don't know. The documents looked valid. I'm so sorry. I truly am." Maya didn't hear the rest. She hung up and stood there in the quiet morning shop, feeling as if someone had pulled all the air from her lungs. Noah, her brother, the only family she had left, the one person she had sworn to protect with her life. Her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She answered with hands she couldn't control. "Hello, Maya." The man's voice was unfamiliar, thick with a Russian accent, deep and cold like a tomb. "I think we need to talk." "Where is Noah?" Maya screamed. "If you touch my brother, I swear I'll—" "Your brother is safe. For now." The voice cut her off. "He will remain safe if you cooperate. I am Yuri Kozlov. Perhaps you've heard my name from your new lover." Maya knew the name. Constantine had mentioned it before. Not much, but enough for her to understand Yuri was his most dangerous enemy, the man who wanted him dead more than anything in the world. "What do you want?" she asked, forcing calm into a voice that was breaking. "Simple. I want you to come and meet me. Alone. Don't tell Constantine. Don't bring bodyguards. Just you. If I see any sign that you've contacted him, your brother dies. If you call the police, your brother dies. If you do anything other than come here alone, your brother dies. Do you understand?" Maya understood. She understood better than anyone. This wasn't the first time she had been pushed to the edge. This wasn't the first time she had to choose between life and death. But this was the first time the life being threatened wasn't hers. It was Noah's. "The address," she said. Yuri gave her an address in the southern suburbs of Chicago, an abandoned industrial zone known as his territory. "You have 2 hours," he said, and hung up. Maya stood there for a long moment, the phone still pressed to her ear though the line was dead. She thought of Constantine, thought of calling him, telling him everything, letting him bring his army to save Noah. But then she remembered Yuri's warning. If he had people watching her, and she was sure he did, any contact with Constantine could get Noah killed. And she thought of something else. If Constantine came for her, he would face Yuri. There would be war. There would be blood. And if Constantine died because of her, if she became the reason Mila lost another person, she would never forgive herself. Jacob had died for her once already. She couldn't let it happen again. She couldn't let another man sacrifice his life for her. Maya looked at Jacob's photograph on the wall. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm about to do the stupidest thing of my life, but I have no choice." She took Jacob's old truck from behind the shop, the vehicle she had kept for 5 years, though it barely ran. She drove away without looking back, without leaving a message, without telling anyone. 2 hours later, she parked in front of an abandoned warehouse in the suburbs, where 4 black SUVs waited and dozens of armed men stood guard. She stepped out, hands raised to show she carried no weapon, and walked toward the door where hell awaited. For Noah, she would do anything, even walk alone into the devil's den. Inside the dark, freezing warehouse, the smell of damp mold and rust hit Maya the moment she stepped through the iron door. 2 men clamped in on either side, guiding her down a long corridor lit by flickering bulbs until they stopped before a large room that had once been the factory's management office. Yuri Kozlov was sitting there, on a leather chair placed in the center of the room like a throne in his private hell. He looked exactly as Maya had imagined, a sharp-featured face with a scar across his nose, bottomless black eyes, and the smile of a predator savoring the moment before striking. Behind him, in the corner, Maya saw Noah. Her brother was curled up on a plastic chair, hands tied behind his back, eyes squeezed shut, his body rocking gently in the way she knew all too well. Noah was in panic. He hated change, hated strangers, hated unfamiliar noise and light, and now he was trapped in the worst nightmare his special mind could imagine. "Noah," Maya cried, her voice breaking. "Look at me. I'm here. I'm taking you home." Noah opened his eyes at her voice, and for a second they lit up before darkening with fear as he saw the armed men around him. "Sis," he whispered, trembling. "Take me home. I want to go home." "How touching," Yuri said mockingly. "Such beautiful sibling love. But first, we have business, Miss Maya. What do you want?" Maya turned to face him, forcing calm into a voice boiling inside. "If you want money, I don't have it. If you want to kill me to hurt Constantine, do it. But release my brother first. He's innocent. He doesn't even understand what's happening." Yuri laughed, the cold sound echoing in the empty room. "I don't want your money, and I don't want to kill you. At least not yet. I want something far more valuable. I want Konstantin Volkov." He stood and walked slowly toward her, black eyes fixed on hers. "Do you know how long Konstantin and I have been fighting? 12 years. 12 years I've tried to bring him down. But he had no weakness. His wife is dead. His daughter is guarded like a princess in a fortress. He was an impenetrable wall, until you appeared." Yuri stopped inches from her, close enough for her to smell cigars and whiskey on his breath. "You are his weakness. For the first time in 12 years, Konstantin Volkov has something to lose. He loves you. And love, my dear miss, Maya, is the most dangerous weapon in the world when used correctly." "I don't understand what you're saying," Maya replied, hiding fear in her voice. "I'm just a mechanic. I have no value to you." "Oh, but you do," Yuri smiled. "You don't need to do anything. Just stay here. When Konstantin realizes you're missing, he'll go mad searching. He'll act recklessly, make mistakes, and when he rushes here to save you, I'll be waiting, with my full force, with traps set. He'll die because of you, and his empire will be mine." Maya felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. This was a trap. From the beginning, she wasn't the target. She was bait, and if she did nothing, Konstantin would walk into it and die. "I did what you asked," Maya said, her voice shaking but firm. "I didn't contact Konstantin. I came alone. He doesn't know I'm here." "I know," Yuri nodded. "But do you think he won't notice you're gone? Do you think little Mila won't ask why Miss Maya hasn't come? Do you think Alexei won't investigate when your shop is closed all day without reason? Konstantin will find out. It's only a matter of time. And when he does, he'll come." Yuri returned to his chair, poured a glass of whiskey, and sipped calmly. "You can make this easier. Call him. Tell him to come. Tell him you're in danger. Play the perfect bait. If you cooperate, I'll release your brother after Konstantin is dead. If you don't," Yuri glanced coldly at Noah, "I'll start cutting off his fingers one by one until you change your mind." Maya looked at her trembling brother, then back at Yuri with eyes war had taught her to keep unreadable. She knew she needed time. She needed a way out. She needed to save Noah without letting Konstantin die for her. She had survived hell before. She would survive this too. 3 hours passed in that cold room. Maya was tied to a chair beside Noah, the two siblings holding hands through the ropes, and she whispered to him reassurances she didn't even know were true. "I'll take you home. Everything will be all right. Trust me." Yuri sat there sipping whiskey, waiting with the patience of a predator who knows the prey will come on its own. He didn't know that Maya had spent those 3 hours doing what the military had taught her long ago, observing, counting guards, memorizing door positions, finding weaknesses in the security, and most importantly, slowly loosening the rope by rotating her wrist at the angle she had learned in survival training. 20 minutes away by car, Konstantin Volkov was losing his mind. Mila had called Miss Maya at 3 in the afternoon to ask about homework, but no one answered. The shop was closed. Maya's truck was gone. No message. No note. Alexei investigated and discovered that Noah had been taken from Lakewood by people with forged documents. Konstantin knew instantly this was Yuri. Only Yuri was reckless and stupid enough to touch someone of his. "Find her," Konstantin ordered, his voice cold as ice while his eyes burned with a fury no one had ever seen before. "Turn the city upside down if you must. I want to know where she is within 1 hour." 40 minutes later, one of Konstantin's spies reported the warehouse location. Yuri wasn't as good at hiding as he thought, or perhaps he wanted to be found. Wanted Konstantin to rush into the trap he had set. But Yuri had underestimated one thing. Konstantin Volkov wasn't the type to charge into a trap without a plan. And he didn't come alone. He brought an army. The first explosion rang out at 6:47 in the evening, exactly 12 hours after Maya received Yuri's call. The warehouse front door was blown apart by explosives, and in that moment of chaos, Maya moved. She had loosened the ropes enough to free one hand. She yanked hard, ignoring the pain as the skin on her wrist tore, and freed herself while everyone around panicked at the gunfire outside. The nearest guard turned at the noise, but Maya was faster. 6 years of military training didn't vanish just because she'd left the service. She kicked his knee, knocking him off balance, then looped the loosened rope around his neck from behind. He collapsed unconscious, and Maya tore the gun from his hand. She turned to Noah, hands shaking as she cut his bindings. "Look at me. Just look at me. Don't look at anything else." Noah nodded, tears filling his eyes but trusting his sister completely. She pulled him into the corner, placed him behind a large metal cabinet, and ordered, "Stay here. Don't come out no matter what happens. I'll come back." Gunfire ripped through the warehouse like fireworks from hell. Konstantin's men stormed in from 3 directions, and Yuri's forces were being overwhelmed. Maya moved through the room with a gun in her hand, combat instinct surging as if she'd never left the battlefield. She shot one man aiming toward the door, then another trying to flee. No hesitation, no fear, only survival instinct and the will to protect her brother. Yuri tried to escape through the back door, but Maya cut him off. She stood there, gun aimed at his chest, blood from a wound on her forehead running down her face, but her hand didn't shake. The mechanic, Yuri sneered despite being cornered. "Turns out you don't just fix cars. I also fix mistakes," Maya replied, finger on the trigger, "like your mistake of touching my brother." Before she could fire, a voice came from behind. "Maya." Konstantin stepped in, his expensive suit stained with blood, smoke rising from the gun in his hand. His gray eyes swept over her from head to toe, checking for wounds, then locked on Yuri with burning fury. "Let me," he said evenly, with a cruelty Maya had never heard before. "He's mine." Maya hesitated for a second, then lowered her weapon and stepped back. This wasn't her fight. It was 12 years of war between 2 empires, and she had no right to steal the ending Konstantin deserved. "Konstantin," Yuri said, still trying to sound calm though his face was pale. "We can negotiate. I have information. I have money." Konstantin didn't answer. He stepped forward and looked straight into his lifelong enemy's eyes. "You touched what's mine," he said, his voice cold as a Siberian winter. "You kidnapped her brother. You threatened to torture an innocent man to force her to betray me. There is no negotiation for that." Yuri opened his mouth, but the gunshot came first. One shot, between the eyes. The rival Mafia boss collapsed onto the cold concrete, black eyes staring in death. 12 years of war ended in an instant. Konstantin turned to Maya, and the ice wall on his face shattered. He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms as if afraid she'd vanish if he let go. "Never do that again," he whispered into her hair, his voice trembling. "Never disappear without telling me. I thought I'd lost you. I thought I'd lost someone else again." "My brother," Maya said through tears. "Noah is still in the room." Konstantin nodded to Alexei, who immediately went to find him. Minutes later, Noah was brought out, shaking and crying but unharmed. Maya wrapped her arms around her brother, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time in many hours, she allowed herself to breathe. They left the warehouse in the darkness, leaving Yuri's body and the wreckage for Konstantin's men to clean up. Noah was placed in a car with Alexei watching over him, calmer now after being with his sister, already drifting into sleep on the back seat from exhaustion. Maya rode alone with Konstantin, silent the entire way back. She stared out the window at Chicago sliding past in the night, and felt her body begin to tremble as the adrenaline drained away. She had killed someone tonight, for the first time since Syria. She'd thought she'd never have to do that again. The car stopped in front of Konstantin's penthouse instead of Maya's shop. She didn't object. She didn't have the strength to object to anything anymore. Noah was taken into a private living room to rest, with a professional caregiver at his side. Maya was led by Constantine into his study, where he closed the door and faced her under the warm yellow light. "Why?" he asked, his voice not angry, only tired and hurting. "Why didn't you call me? Why did you go alone? Do you know you almost died? Do you know what I thought when I realized you were missing?" Maya looked at him, and for the first time she saw Konstantin Volkov not as a powerful mafia boss, but as a man terrified of losing the woman he loved, just as she'd once feared losing Jacob, just as she feared losing Noah. "Because I couldn't let you die for me," she said through tears. "Yuri wanted to use me as bait. He wanted you to rush into a trap to save me, and I knew you would. I knew you'd come even knowing it was a trap. I couldn't let that happen. I lost Jacob because he chose to save me instead of himself. I couldn't survive that happening again. I couldn't let another man die because of me." Constantine stepped closer, placed his hands on her shoulders, and looked straight into her eyes. "You don't get to decide that," he said, firm but gentle. "You don't get to decide whether I'm allowed to sacrifice myself for you. That's my choice, and I'll choose to save you every time, trap or not, even if I have to face the whole world, because you're the only thing that matters to me besides Mila. You're what I didn't know I needed until I had you." Tears streamed down Maya's face. She'd been strong for too long, alone for too long, and now someone was telling her she didn't have to be, and she didn't know how to respond. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared of losing you. I'm scared Mila will lose someone else. I'm scared I'm your weakness and will get you hurt." Constantine pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "You are my weakness," he admitted, "but you're also my strength. Before you, I only existed. I built an empire, destroyed enemies, but I didn't live. You gave me a reason to live. You gave Mila a reason to smile. You gave my broken family a chance to heal. I won't lose you. Never." He pulled back slightly, cupped her face, and wiped away her tears. "From today on, you and Noah are under my absolute protection. Not as a transaction, not as a debt, but because I love you, and I'll do anything to keep you safe." Maya looked into the gray eyes filled with emotions he'd hidden for years. She placed her hand over his heart and felt it beating hard. "I love you too," she whispered. "I don't know if it's crazy. I don't know if we have a future. But I love you." Constantine bent down and kissed her, and in that moment, inside the luxury penthouse overlooking Chicago at night, two scarred souls finally found peace in each other's arms. 1 year later, Maya Reyes's life had changed in ways she'd never dared to dream. Reyes Repairs was no longer a small garage on the south side. It had grown into the largest medical equipment support center for people with disabilities in Chicago, with more than 20 employees, most of them veterans who, like Maya, had once been abandoned by the system. They came not only to work but to reclaim purpose, to prove that wounds didn't define them, and to help others who were hurting as they once had. Maya still worked every day, still personally repaired the most complex devices, still knelt to meet each patient's eyes and asked how they felt. She never forgot the lesson Mila's wheelchair taught her. Even the most expensive equipment in the world is meaningless if no one listens to the person using it. Noah lived in an apartment near Maya's center with professional caregivers present 24 hours a day. He had made remarkable progress over the past year, speaking more, communicating better, and even beginning part-time work at Maya's center. His gift for numbers turned out to be invaluable in designing and adjusting equipment. For the first time in his life, Noah had a job, a purpose, a place he belonged. Mila was accepted into the biomedical engineering program at Northwestern University on a full scholarship. At 15, she was the youngest student in her class, yet no one was surprised when her grades topped the list. "I want to design devices the way Miss Maya fixed mine," Mila said at her admission ceremony. "But right from the beginning, so no one has to hurt the way I did." Maya sat in the front row that day, tears streaming as she watched the girl she loved like a daughter step onto the stage. Constantine sat beside her, holding her hand, and when they looked at each other, no words were needed. They'd traveled a long road to reach this moment. Maya and Constantine didn't have a grand wedding. They didn't need diamonds or 1,000 guests. They only needed to know that each morning they'd wake to each other, that when nightmares came, someone would hold them and say everything would be all right. Constantine had begun steering his empire toward legitimacy, not because Maya asked, she never did, but because he wanted to be worthy of her. Wanted Mila to be proud of her father. Wanted to build something instead of only destroying. I can't change the past, he told Maya one late night. But I can choose the future. And I choose a future with you. That evening, 1 year after Maya walked into Yuri's lair to save her brother, she stood on Konstantine's penthouse rooftop, watching the sunset stain Chicago red. Mila sat beside her explaining a new wheelchair design to Noah, who listened intently, nodding and speaking numbers only they understood. Konstantin stood behind Maya, arms around her waist, chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he whispered. Maya glanced at Jacob's photo she still kept in her wallet, then at her new family, thanking him. She said softly, "For saving me that day, because if he hadn't, I wouldn't be here, wouldn't have met you, wouldn't have Mila and Noah and all of this." Konstantin held her tighter. He chose the right person to save. Maya smiled, and for the first time in years that smile carried no guilt. She'd learned that sometimes the most broken things aren't machines, but people. And sometimes the best way to fix them isn't to replace them, but to listen, to stay, to not give up. She didn't fix Konstantin Volkov. She was simply the first to see him as more than a monster, and perhaps that was all he ever needed. Maya's story teaches us that everyone carries wounds no one can see, but what matters isn't whether they heal. It's whether we dare to open ourselves so someone else can see them. And when we see another's wounds, whether we dare to stop and ask where it hurts. Maya did that for Mila, and it changed everything. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our daily videos. Like and share with those you love, those who need reminding that sometimes the bravest thing is telling the truth to the powerful, and the kindest thing is listening to the hurting. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever met someone like Maya, who saw pain no one else saw? Have you ever been heard when the world ignored your voice? Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear from the heart. Thank you for watching. Wishing you good health, joy, and peace each day. Remember, you deserve to be heard. You deserve to be loved, and sometimes the person who can change your life is only one simple question away. Where does it hurt? Goodbye, and see you in the next video.